The world has long agreed that Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and we support action to prevent that, and that is what this is. The US action was directed at specific sites central to Iran's nuclear program.
The possibility of Iranian sleeper cells in Australia and why it took so long for Albo to speak publicly were just two of the topics PM Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong faced today at a tense press conference that at one point seemed as though the PM might have walked out on. Here to help us understand what happened is Federal Politics editor Katina Curtis from Canberra. Katina, you were at the press conference. Did Albo walk off?
Well, look, Ben, he certainly did leave while there were still plenty of questions to be asked, including, the effect of all of this on petrol prices for Australians. We didn't really get a proper answer to whether there was any Australian involvement in these strikes, including through our shared facilities with the US, such as the Pine Gap intelligence base, or whether we were involved in any refueling of the B-2 bombers like we were with the strikes on the Houthis in Yemen last year. So definitely lots of questions to be answered. And but he did leave the room just shy of 10 minutes after taking questions.
Yeah, incredible considering it's something that the whole world is talking about right now. And now I mentioned that he was grilled over the timeliness of his response. The attacks by the US on those Iranian nuclear facilities happened Sunday morning, and here we are Monday morning, late Monday morning, when the Prime Minister of Australia fronted the media. How did he respond to that criticism?
Oh, look, he basically just waved it off. He said, well, the government issued a statement yesterday. I mean, the government did issue a statement, but it didn't have his name attached to it, or the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, who's travelling overseas at the moment. It was issued by a government spokesperson. So I think there was a degree of surprise that, we didn't hear from the Prime Minister or any of the other ministers yesterday. I actually had a quick look up at what happened in 2018, which was a sort of similar situation where the US did strikes in Syria. That was actually also under Donald Trump. Now, this had been sort of, again, talked about a bit, weren't they, ahead of times. And on that occasion, Malcolm Turnbull, who was the Prime Minister then, issued a joint statement with the Defence Minister and Foreign Minister. And he also said at that time that Australia had been given a heads up by the US. So definitely unusual, I guess, or a bit of a surprise that we didn't see, even if it was just the statement that was released yesterday, but, for it to be the Prime Minister's words.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I mentioned Iranian sleeper cells, which is not so far-fetched because Tehran has raised the prospect of these sleeper cells in its rhetoric against America. The PM and Foreign Minister Penny Wong were asked about this today. What was their response, and has there been any change to Australia's terror threat level?
So no change to the terror threat level as it is at the moment. When it was raised some months ago, late last year, that was in relation to basically locally grown threats, is what the ASIO boss said at the time. But the PM today said, that terror threat level is constantly under review by our intelligence and security agencies. So, they're always looking at it. We have seen the US's State Department has issued a worldwide caution for Americans travelling overseas. Australia hasn't gone so far as to do that, but they've certainly, DFAT is reviewing all of its travel advice for Australians, and they have issued some, pretty serious advices. Do not travel, get out of the Middle East, particularly Iran and Israel, as soon as you possibly can.
And was Penny Wong able to give any updates on the mercy missions to try and repatriate some of those Australians who are stuck in the region?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's about 3,000 Australians in Iran who've registered as wanting to get out, and another, I think it's about 12 or 1,500 in Israel. It continues to be the case that the airspace in both those countries is closed, which obviously makes, getting people out of there pretty tricky. They have to go over the land border. Penny Wong said, look, there are DFAT staff in Azerbaijan, just on the border with Iran. If people can get to that border, she acknowledged that is in itself will be a fairly dangerous journey. But if people can get there, then they can get that assistance from the Australians. She also said that one of the reasons that they shut the Australian embassy in Iran last week and got the DFAT staff out of there was they basically looked at advice or had advice around the likelihood that Iran might, hit or take hostage or something, basically American diplomats and diplomats of allied countries with America. So it was decided it was prudent to get the Australian consular staff out of there at that time.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we'll be following very closely in the days to come. Hopefully, we'll get more information from our government, and they might have press conferences that last a little bit longer than 10 minutes. We'll have to wait and see. Federal Politics editor Katina Curtis from Canberra, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks, Ben.